I'm Evan Park, 30 years old. The night she said I like you but I'm not in love with you, I flipped our life to roommates and shut off every boyfriend privilege. If you were 30, would you let someone keep the perks of love without the love itself? I'd love to hear what you think. It happened on a Thursday, late summer in Seattle. You know the kind of night cool air drifting in through half-cracked windows, the hum of a ceiling fan you forget is even on, and the distant sound of freeway traffic rolling like a tired river through the city. We were both on the couch, not touching, just existing in the same space the way people do when things start slipping into neutral. Marissa was nursing a glass of wine. I was scrolling through some documentation for a systems update at work. Nothing dramatic. And then she said it. Not cruelly. Not even dramatically. Just a casual, almost sleepy drop. I like you, Evan, but I'm not in love with you. No anger. No tears. Just those words. I blinked once. Set the tablet down. All right, I said, my voice steady. Are you saying we're done? She tilted her head like the idea hadn't occurred to her yet. No, she said. I just think we're comfortable. And maybe that's enough. We don't have to be all head over heels. We work. We work, I repeated. As roommates. Maybe more, maybe not. I don't want anything to change. That's when my mind went to work. I'm a systems analyst. That's not just a job title, it's how I process the world. Inputs, outcomes, dependencies, and failsafes. And in that moment, something clicked. If we were roommates now, then the system needed a patch. Because what she described, it was a one-way data sync. She wanted the comforts of a boyfriend, companionship, emotional labor, financial stability, but without the core code of mutual love. That wasn't a system. That was a service agreement I never signed. So I gave her a small nod and stood up. I'll need a few hours, I said. For what? To update the protocol. She laughed. Thought I was joking. I wasn't. I went into our bedroom and opened my phone's note app. Titled the file Roommate Protocol, effective immediately. First, I listed the acts of service that had until now been part of the boyfriend experience. Morning coffee, custom order, soy milk dash of cinnamon. Grocery runs including her favorites I never eat. Car maintenance check-ins. Table reservations, weekend plans. Financial cover when she was short. Emotional buffering and group settings. Birthday orchestration. Shared streaming services. Inclusion in my family's phone plan. I went down that list and began striking each one off with a quiet kind of calm. If we were roommates, then it made no sense to provide services outside that role. Just like in systems logic, if condition A is no longer valid, all dependent functions must be deprecated. I didn't do it with spite. I didn't do it with drama. I did it like you fix an error in a line of code. Clean, purposeful, permanent, until revised. The next morning, I sent her a message, civil, clear, and time-stamped. Subject: updated living expectations body. Since we've redefined our relationship as roommates, I'll be adjusting our day-to-day routines accordingly. Going forward, we'll each manage our own errands, food plans, finances, and communication preferences. Happy to discuss any logistics. Otherwise, I trust this boundary will support clarity for both of us. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. By Friday evening, I'd already reorganized the kitchen. My pour-over setup now lived on the top shelf next to a single ceramic mug. The fridge was split down the middle. I labeled my containers. Hers remained unlabeled, unbothered. I canceled the weekend reservation I'd made 2 weeks ago for her birthday. Quietly, without comment. I disabled her profile on the streaming app I paid for. Changed the password on my family's phone plan dashboard. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam doors. I just let the system adjust itself function by function until it aligned with the new definition she had chosen. That weekend, she was unusually quiet. I could see her reading my message, checking the fridge, hovering near the espresso machine like she expected a second cup to appear. But I made only one. I could feel the questions simmering behind her eyes. Was I being petty? Was I overreacting? No. I was simply implementing her own terms. It's funny what silence can do. It doesn't escalate, but it magnifies. Every time she opened a drawer and found it reorganized, every time she looked at me and realized I wasn't initiating dinner plans, every time she checked her phone and saw no reservation notifications or Venmo transfers, silence turned into pressure. We hadn't broken up. Not officially, that was her whole point. But I had stepped out of the role she wanted me to stay, in, unpaid and unloved. And that's how the system began to rewrite itself. By Monday, I had deleted the couple's groceries note from our shared reminders app. Created 2 separate ones, Evan's list and shared supplies split, 50/50. Under shared supplies, I added paper towels, dish soap, trash bags. I left it blank for her to fill in her half. Then I waited. And while I waited, I started to breathe easier. There's a peace that comes with boundaries, like finally closing tabs that have been eating memory for months. And even though I knew it would take time for this new dynamic to settle, I also knew one thing for certain. The system had been broken long before she admitted it. All I did was patch the code. Seattle, 2025 Week 1, Evan, age 30. Friday morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I wanted to make sure everything ran exactly the way I'd planned, like a system reboot after a major update. I headed to the kitchen, boiled the water, and measured the grounds for 1 cup of coffee. Just one. Marissa's mug was still in its usual spot, the off-white ceramic one, with "You Make My Day Brighter" painted in bubbly blue letters. I didn't touch it. The coffee bloomed in the pour-over. I stirred it, poured it into my own mug, the plain gray one, and stood by the window while the city outside slowly shook off its morning fog. Marissa walked in a few minutes later. Jacket slung over her arm hair in a loose bun that just woke up, look still clinging to her eyes. "You didn't make coffee for both of us," she asked. I didn't even look away from the window. "There's the espresso machine. You can use it if you want. We're roommates now, remember?" She didn't answer, just stared at the countertop like it had betrayed her. That afternoon, I stopped by Trader Joe's after work. First time in a long while that I went shopping just for myself. No rice crackers, no cherry granola, no chamomile tea I didn't drink but always bought. I grabbed pasta, canned tomatoes, chicken breast, baby spinach, and exactly 4 Fuji apples. Only things I'd eat. When I got home, I used a Sharpie to label everything Evan 10 over 2025. Then I rearranged the fridge, split right down the middle. The dividing line A, tall carton of coconut water. I taped a sticky note to the fridge door. "Please label your items. Shared supplies, paper towels, dish soap, trash bags will be split 50 over 50. E. No signature needed. Roommates don't require full names." Saturday evening, a coworker texted me, asking if I wanted to join a group dinner near South Lake Union. I almost said no out of habit. But this time I typed, "Sounds good," and hit send. I opened my reservation app. There it was, her birthday dinner already scheduled. I canceled it without flinching. Marissa stepped into the hallway as I was buttoning a shirt. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Dinner with coworkers." "You're not going to ask if I want to come?" I shrugged. "Do roommates usually go on dates together?" She blinked, not hurt, just confused. The rules had changed and she hadn't read the update log. Sunday morning, I heard the sound of her car trying and failing to start. 3 ignition clicks from the garage downstairs. Then footsteps back up, quick and irritated. She knocked on my doorframe. "Evan, my car won't start. Can you take a look?" I walked downstairs with her, but kept my distance. "Did you check the oil?" I asked. "No. But you usually know this stuff." I pointed at the phone in her hand. "There's a garage 2 blocks down. Open on Sundays. You could call them for a tow. I can wait with you if that helps." She looked like she wanted to protest, but nothing came out. "I'll call," she said finally. I nodded and stepped back. That evening, I cleared every shared task from our reminders app. No more buy paper towels, no more dinner reservations, no more schedule Marissa's car service. Instead, I created 2 new lists. Evans to DOS. Shared chores. Split 50 over 50. I added clear boundaries. If you use it, replace it. If you want it, buy it. If you broke it, fix it. My name didn't appear anywhere on her responsibilities. Marissa started keeping quiet. Not angry silence, more like hesitant confusion. Like someone reading a manual that's suddenly in a different language. She was used to a version of me who anticipated needs without being asked. Who brewed coffee with her oat milk in mind? Who booked restaurants, filled her gas tank, and handled her insurance calls when she felt overwhelmed? That version had been deprecated. The current version operated on boundaries, not emotion. Sunday night, I made pasta and spinach for one. No candles, no music, no banter across the table. I washed my own dish, wiped the counter, opened the fridge, and felt a strange satisfaction at how orderly it looked, divided, labeled efficient. Before bed, I opened my roommate protocol checklist, added a few more lines. No car troubleshooting. No dinner invites. No speaking on her behalf in group chats. Underneath that, I wrote week 1 completed. Then I turned out the lights. The system was running just fine. Seattle 2025 week 2 to 3, Evan age 30. The second week passed like a code deployment that no one noticed, quiet, deliberate, with no fanfare, which was exactly what I wanted. No chaos, no arguments, just a shift in the system. By now, our routines had fully diverged. We shared the same square footage but operated like two different apps on airplane mode. Marissa made her own coffee badly. She forgot to label her groceries. And I had started using headphones around the house even when I wasn't listening to anything, just to keep the signal clear. Every few days, I added to the roommate protocol list in my phone. Not because I needed more rules, but because it gave me a sense of direction. Every rule was a marker of distance, gained a trail of quiet footsteps leading me out of the role I had once filled too easily. But even systems built on logic encounter pressure tests. For me, it was her birthday. It landed at the start of week 3. I knew the date. Of course I did. I'd planned the last 2. Picked the restaurants, ordered the cake, texted her sister to get her here in secret. Bought flowers in the color scheme she claimed matched her birthstone. But this year, I wished her happy birthday at 7:30 a.m. while stirring oatmeal. Happy birthday, Marissa, I said, tone polite level. Hope it's a good one. She blinked at me from across the kitchen island, still in her robe. That's it. I nodded. We're roommates now. Roommates don't usually throw each other parties. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I took my bowl to my room and closed the door behind me. Later that afternoon, I noticed the group chat she had with her friends was unusually active. Her phone kept lighting up on the counter. I didn't look, I never needed to. But I caught a glimpse of one preview message. He didn't even get her a card, that's cold. Another said I thought he was the sweet but boring one, guess not that sweet. I didn't respond. Not in the group chat. Not even in person. There was nothing to defend. She had redefined the relationship. I had simply adjusted the feature set accordingly. That evening she dressed up. Nice black dress. Makeup a little more dramatic than usual. I heard the door slam behind her as she left, for what I assumed was a dinner with friends. I reheated leftover pasta and watched a documentary about coral bleaching. Around 10:30 she returned. Alone. Heels in hand, lipstick faded, shoulders tight. She didn't say a word. I didn't ask. The next morning I updated the protocol list again. Birthdays verbal acknowledgement only. Group chats mute indefinitely. Third-party perceptions non-actionable. That last one was important. I wasn't interested in managing outside narratives. Not anymore. Midweek we passed each other like ghosts. Quick nods, the occasional hey out of reflex. Nothing more. She tried once, maybe twice to test the water. Want to grab Thai sometime this weekend? She asked one night, leaning against the kitchen counter. I looked up from my laptop. Thanks, but I already have plans, I said. She gave a small, polite smile. With someone. I'll be out of the apartment, that's all. She nodded, took her tea, and left the room. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just testing me. She was trying to see if the old version of me was still somewhere underneath all this structure. But he wasn't. I had one more reminder to deal with that week, our shared grocery subscription. I opened the app, found the recurring order, and split the profile in 2. Evan Park Primary, Marissa Cole unlinked. Done. If she needed oat milk, she could order her own. If she wanted bath tissue in the brand she preferred, it was on her now. I changed the delivery notes. Leave at unit 2 amperes items labeled Evan only. Just a line of text. But it meant I would never again have to explain why I didn't replace her yogurt when it ran out. Friday evening, I received a message from her. Can we talk this weekend? Just talk. I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Eventually, I typed back. Sure, let's schedule a time. Not out of curiosity, not out of hope, just out of courtesy. That weekend conversation never happened. She spent most of Saturday out. When she came home, she went straight to her room. On Sunday, I was gone most of the day working out of a cafe downtown and reading on a bench near South Lake Union. We drifted so far apart, the question wasn't, what are we anymore? It was, do we even share a life or just an address? By the end of week 3, I opened the roommate protocol note one last time that month. I didn't need to add anything. I just read through the list and realized something important. This wasn't about punishment. I wasn't trying to teach her a lesson or prove a point. I was just living according to a new structure, one she'd chosen, even if she hadn't expected me to believe her. But I had. And I'd built a whole new operating system around her exact words. Seattle 2025 week 4, divided by early September, Evan age 30. By the 4th week, the silence had weight. It wasn't hostile. It was ambient. Like air pressure before a storm. I'd made the changes, rebuilt the daily systems, redefined every edge of our coexistence. But some fragments of the old setup still lingered, like the lease, like the phone plan, like the invisible tether that comes from not fully closing a chapter. That's what week 4 was for. Tidy endings. The phone plan was first. Marissa was still on my family account, a leftover from when she switched to my carrier during our first year dating. Back then, it had been practical, affordable, familiar. Now it was a dangling thread that didn't belong. I logged into the account Monday morning. 4 lines, one with my name, one for my mom, one for my sister, and one for her. No more. I selected her line, clicked Remove from Family Plan, and confirmed the change. The system processed it in under 30 seconds. Just like that, the contract between us technically and emotionally was severed. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I was making tea when I heard her curse softly in the other room. Then footsteps. "Evan," she said, stepping into the kitchen. "My phone's not working. I can't make calls." I sipped my tea. "You're not on my plan anymore," I said plainly. Her eyebrows furrowed. "What? Since when?" "This morning. It's been almost a month since we redefined things. It didn't make sense for me to keep covering your phone." She blinked visibly, trying to form a response that would land. "You could have at least warned me," she said. "I didn't think it needed a warning," I replied. "Roommates usually pay their own bills." She stared at me, not angry, just stunned, like she was realizing piece by piece that this wasn't a bluff, that I wasn't trying to scare her into apologizing or reset the old dynamic. This was real, structural, non-reversible. Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know what happened to you." I didn't flinch. "Nothing happened to me," I said. "I just started listening." That night, I opened the lease renewal packet. The property manager had dropped it off a week earlier. I left it untouched on the kitchen counter, neatly sealed, addressed to both of us. Now I took it to my desk and flipped it open. Terms were the same, month to month, rent increase minimal. But I wasn't going to sign it, because I'd already signed a different lease. 2 days earlier, I'd finalized a 1-bedroom near South Lake Union, walking distance to work. Compact, clean, efficient, like the new version of me I'd become. Move-in date October 1st. 30 days from now. Plenty of time to close out this chapter with dignity. I printed the new lease, folded it, and slipped it into a small box I'd ordered for the occasion. A velvet jewelry box. Not because I meant to fake a proposal, but because I knew how much power symbols could carry. Marissa had spoken her truth. This was mine. Friday morning, I placed the lease renewal form back on the kitchen table untouched. Next to it, I set down the velvet box. And then I waited. She noticed it just after breakfast. Came in still half asleep, clutching her dead phone. Her eyes darted from the envelope to the box. She didn't speak, just looked at me. I nodded toward the box. "It's not what you think. Go ahead." She opened it slowly. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a silver key. To my new apartment. With it a note, "I move out October 1st. You have 30 days to make your own decisions. No judgment. Just clarity." She sat down. I poured myself coffee. Didn't offer her any. We stayed in that room for 10 minutes without speaking. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional ping of an app trying to connect on her phone, still disconnected from any network. She finally broke the silence. "So that's it." I looked up. "That's it. And we don't even talk about it." "I think we've talked enough," I said gently. "At least I have. The rest. I've shown." She lowered her gaze. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with all of this." I offered the smallest of shrugs. "I know." I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I didn't say, "This is what you get." That's not how justice works when it's quiet. Instead, I stood up, took my mug, and walked to my room. The system didn't need a victory lap. It just needed to close. That night, I went through my calendar and deleted the last of our old reminders. Dinner reservations. Shared grocery lists. Maintenance check-ins. Birthday alerts. Anniversary countdowns. I added one final entry, move-out date, October 1st. Then I slept better than I had in a month. Seattle 2025. End of September, Evan age 30. By the final week of September, the apartment felt like a place between states. Not quite lived in, not quite empty, just limbo. Boxes lined the hallway. Labels in sharp black marker: kitchen, Evan books, Evan misc, Evan, none said hours, none mentioned Marissa. We still shared the same square footage, slept under the same roof, passed each other in the hall or in front of the microwave. But whatever remained between us wasn't a relationship, it was a buffer. And that too had an expiration date. October 1st was coming. I could see it on the calendar every time I opened the fridge. I spent the week dismantling the last vestiges of we. I returned a set of champagne flutes we'd never opened. I boxed up a photo of us at Golden Gardens Beach and tucked it into a folder labeled Archive Not Urgent. I logged into our shared streaming accounts and made sure her profiles were removed. Then I went further. There were still ghost payments, little subscriptions, or errands I'd taken on automatically over the past year. Apple Music for both of us. An annual charge for the meditation app she never used but insisted she needed. A subscription box that delivered artisanal pasta we stopped cooking together 6 months ago. Gone. One by one. I wasn't deleting her. I was deleting the part of me that had been responsible for her by default. Tuesday afternoon, I received a reminder from the property management system. Confirm move-out inspection for Unit 2 Amperes. I clicked yes. A new page loaded asking will both tenants be present. I hovered. Then I selected no. That night I walked into the kitchen and found a pile of unopened mail and 2 shared receipts on the table. One was from the hardware store dish soap and sponges, the other from the grocery paper towels and trash bags. Next to them was a sticky note in her handwriting. Yours is $13. Split evenly. I flipped it over and wrote, absolutely. Venmo request works. Underneath, I added a smiley face. Not out of sarcasm, just politeness. She saw it later and gave a half nod from across the room. That was the extent of our week's communication. On Thursday, I canceled the extra parking spot we'd used when we had 2 cars. Mine still ran. Hers was parked off-street now after the jumpstart debacle. She never mentioned it again. I sent the cancellation to the building manager. They replied, thanks, Evan. Spot will be reassigned October 1. Everything it seemed was resetting on that day. I created a moving checklist in my phone. Change of address. Transfer utilities. New route to work. Declutter bathroom shelf. Return Marissa's extra key. That last one made me pause. Technically, she didn't have to return mine. She wasn't the one moving. But I wrote it down anyway. Saturday was packing day. I started early before the city had fully woken up, made coffee for one skipped breakfast, and put on an old hoodie I wouldn't take to the new place. The apartment was filled with the sound of tape-ripping cardboard creaking and the occasional thud of a book hitting the bottom of a box. I didn't ask Marissa for help. She didn't offer. By mid-afternoon, most of my things were stacked neatly by the front door, a clear path toward independence. When I sat down for a break, I noticed the sticky note still on the fridge. Shared supplies split 50/50. I peeled it off, folded it once, threw it away. There was nothing left to split. That night, I left the velvet key box out on the counter. Empty now. I didn't want to bring it with me. Letting it sit there was my way of saying this was a marker, not a memento. Marissa saw it the next morning. She didn't say a word. On the final Sunday of September, I stood in the middle of the apartment and scanned every corner. The couch we'd picked together, the bookshelf we'd never fully filled, the dish rack that leaned just a bit, always slightly off balance. Everything looked smaller now. Cleaner, yes, but also emptier. I opened the roommate protocol note on my phone for the last time. Scrolled through every item. No shared meals. No birthday plans. No emergency logistics. No couple errands. No shared payments. No unspoken expectations. Then I added the final line. No unfinished exits. And I hit save. Seattle 2025. Early October, Evan age 30? By the first Saturday in October, I had a new set of keys. 2 to be precise. 1 for the building, 1 for the unit. No duplicates. No spares. I kept them on a fresh ring, sleek clean, no extra attachments. The kind that didn't jingle too loudly when I dropped them on a countertop. The sound felt mine. The apartment was just under 700 square feet. Hardwood floors, a modest view of a rust-colored coffee shop. Enough space for a table, a small couch, and the kind of quiet that didn't echo with old arguments. The place was intentionally empty at first. No wall art, no fridge magnets, not even a rug. I didn't want to carry over noise from the last place. I wanted silence I could choose. A few days after I moved in, Kendra texted. Dinner this weekend. Full crew. Just casual. You coming? I stared at it for a second. Then replied, I'll be there. Thanks for the invite. No mention of Marissa. None expected. Saturday evening arrived faster than I anticipated. I pulled on a black button-up plain jeans and a jacket that hadn't been in rotation since last spring. The walk to the restaurant felt lighter than usual. Kendra had picked a quiet bistro on Capitol Hill neutral ground where no memories of couple brunches lingered. Inside the table was already half full. Mark waved me over. His fiancée Jules smiled politely. Dana pulled out the seat next to her and offered a raised eyebrow as greeting. Saturday. We didn't speak about it directly, not at first. Conversation flowed the way it usually did. Books. Someone had started and abandoned a podcast. Mark had just discovered Jules's latest client meltdown. I chimed in here and there. Nothing major. Just enough to stay in orbit. Then came the silence. The subtle pause in the conversation when Dana carefully asked, "So how's the new place?" "Not your place. Not your apartment with Marissa. Just the new place." I didn't flinch. "Quiet," I said with a soft smile. "First time I've lived alone in, well, a while." Mark sipped his wine. Jules nodded slowly. Kendra leaned forward. "You kept the corner desk right. The one from your old office?" I exhaled through my nose. She knew. They all did. "I did," I said. "Put it by the window. Gets nice light in the afternoon." No one said Marissa's name, but her absence filled the room anyway. Later in the evening, Dana asked if I wanted to split dessert. We ordered one slice of lemon tart with 2 forks. It arrived dusted with powdered sugar like it had something to hide. While we ate, she asked quietly without judgment, "Did you tell your parents yet?" I nodded. "Told them a week ago. Just the facts." "And they were relieved I wasn't stringing it along." "Good," she said. "That matters." The bill came. Kendra reached for it first and declared, "We're splitting evenly. No math tonight." Everyone agreed. I paid in cash. The first time in a long time I hadn't needed to double-check for someone else's meal. Outside, we all stood by the curb mid-goodbyes. Dana hugged me a little tighter than usual. Kendra whispered, "I'm proud of you." Mark patted my shoulder. Not one of them said I'm sorry. And that was perfect. Because I wasn't either. I walked back to my apartment alone. No texts, no follow-up calls. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, let the city noise drift in, softened by distance. Then I picked up my phone and opened a blank note. At the top I wrote, "Things I kept, corner desk, cast iron pan, record player, my name on the lease, my choice." And underneath I added, "Things I let go," explaining myself. I hit save and went to bed without waiting for anyone to join me. Seattle, 2025, mid-November, Evan, age 30. By mid-November, the rain had settled in. Not the dramatic kind with thunder or fury. Just steady, gray, and familiar, like Seattle's way of saying, stay inside, start over. That suited me just fine. Work had shifted, not externally, not in title or office location, but I no longer brought tension into morning meetings. I stopped pausing before speaking, waiting for permission that was never required. My words had changed slightly more, measured slightly less filtered. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. In late October, I'd begun waking earlier. It started with a sunrise I hadn't expected, sharp pinkish light slicing through fog. I watched it with black coffee in hand, and something inside clicked. So I kept the habit. 5:30. No alarm. Just my body nudging me into a world where I was fully in charge of the tone. I signed up for a weekend woodworking class. Something tactile, something outside my head. The first project was a simple step stool. Nothing fancy, just 4 legs, sanded edges, and a soft beeswax finish. When I brought it home, I placed it in the closet, not because I needed it, but because I'd built it. Quietly, completely, without feedback. That mattered more than I expected. Kendra texted again. "You coming to Dana's art show next Friday?" she specifically asked. I smiled at that. Dana never specifically asked for anything unless she meant it. I replied, "Wouldn't miss it." The show was held at a gallery near the market, a repurposed brick space with creaky floorboards and warm lighting. I arrived 10 minutes before the official opening. Dana was in the far corner adjusting a frame. When she saw me, she grinned and said, "You're early." I shrugged. Didn't want to miss the good wine. She laughed and handed me a cup anyway. The piece she showed me first was unexpected. It wasn't flashy, no bold colors or sweeping strokes, just muted watercolors, titled "Room with One Chair." I stared at it for a long moment. She watched my face carefully, then said, "That one's about choosing stillness." I nodded. "Yeah, I feel that." She didn't press. But before she walked away to greet someone else, she leaned in and whispered, "You look more like yourself lately." The evening moved easily. People asked where I'd been. I answered with a soft smile, just sorting a few things out. No one prodded further. Jules gave me a tight hug. Mark clapped my back. Dana handed me a folded card at the end inside a small ink sketch of a lamp glowing in a dark room. Below it, she'd written, "Sometimes all you need is one source of light. Glad you stayed lit." I walked home through light drizzle. No umbrella. No rush. And when I reached the door to my apartment, I didn't hesitate before unlocking it. The next morning, I finally opened the last box in my closet. It held a few remnants from the shared life cards, some mismatched kitchenware, a scarf I hadn't realized was still mine. I laid it all out on the floor, held each item once, then chose three things to keep: a cast iron pan, a note she wrote me on my birthday the first year we dated, a photo of our dog who now lived with her. The rest went into a donation bin. I didn't feel triumphant, but I did feel clear. And sometimes that's the bigger win. Seattle 2025 late December, Evan age 30. By the time December rolled in, I had stopped narrating my life to myself. I no longer rehearsed explanations for anyone, no prepared lines for friends, no mental footnotes for strangers, no imaginary rebuttals whispered in the shower. What happened happened. And I was here. The holidays loomed, but not heavily. I decided early on I wasn't going back east this year. No flight home, no forced cheer, no pretending around cousins. I barely saw the rest of the year. Instead, I bought a small tree from a pop-up lot on Capitol Hill, carried it 5 blocks back to my place needles, brushing my coat with every step. It sat crooked in a corner of the living room, leaned slightly like it had a story of its own. I liked that. Kendra stopped by to help decorate. We didn't make a thing out of it, just threw on some jazz-poured hot cider and let the conversation drift. Midway through, she picked up a tiny wooden ornament shaped like a canoe. "You kept this?" she asked, tilting it in her palm. I nodded. It was from that road trip. Oregon coast. She smiled just barely. That weekend was cold as hell. "Yep, but you made us pull over to take pictures of sea lions." "I did," she said, placing the ornament high on the tree. "They were ridiculous." We didn't talk about her anymore. Not directly, but now and then, a phrase or an object would surface, and we let it pass between us gently without examining it too hard. I think that's what healing actually looks like sometimes. Not erasure, just softer edges. I started journaling again. Not every day, just when something caught in my chest and wouldn't let go. Sometimes it was half a sentence. Other times a full page. One entry read, "There is no final conversation that fixes everything. Only quiet choices that shift the ground beneath you." I underlined that twice. On December 22nd, I took the long way home from the grocery store. Not by accident, not because of traffic, just because I could. I passed a bookstore that had just opened a little indie shop, with handwritten signs and warm yellow lights in the window. I went in, walked out with a book on modern sculpture and another on baking bread. When I got home, I baked for the first time in years. The bread came out lumpy and dense, completely misshapen. I ate it anyway. Christmas morning was quiet. No presents, no music, just sunlight streaking through partially open blinds and the smell of cinnamon from a candle I'd forgotten I owned. I sat on the floor back against the couch, sipping coffee and watching the light move. It was enough. On New Year's Eve, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hi. I know I shouldn't, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. Hope you're okay." No name. But I knew who it was. I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. Not in anger. Not in revenge. Just because I didn't need it anymore. The next morning, I stepped outside and felt something unexpected. Stillness, yes. But also momentum. As if the world hadn't been waiting for me, but would gladly let me catch up if I chose to walk. So I did. There was no cinematic ending, no dramatic reveal, no moment where the music swelled and I stood victorious over anyone. And yet something ended. Or maybe it shifted. What I thought would destroy me didn't. It carved out a space I didn't know I needed, a quieter version of myself that could sit with the past without shaking. The betrayal didn't disappear. But it stopped defining the room when I walked into it. I used to think closure came from answers. Now I think it comes from choosing not to wait for them, letting the silence speak instead of shouting into it. I won't tell you it was easy, or that I wouldn't have changed things if I could. But I will say this. Sometimes distance is not a punishment, it's a boundary that lets light back in. And sometimes the absence of applause is the loudest kind of peace. If this had happened to you, would you have chosen confrontation or quiet departure? I'd really like to hear your thoughts below. Thanks for listening. And if you've ever had to walk away from something that once felt like home, know this: you're not alone.